I'm excited to introduce this panel on conversation with the new advisory panel on the Federal Research Support System organized by CSPC. If you like this panel or any other panel, feel free to tweet about it. Make sure you tag @SciencePolicy or use the hashtag CSPC2022 so others may find it and you. We also want you to fill out a survey that our survey committee has created to help improve CSPC. Your responses will be incorporated into the planning for 2023 so that the conference may be even better. So with that, welcome all, potentially the drill on the roof, and our panel for our breakfast session. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and thank you for the conference organizers for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here. So thank you, and just so please drink up your coffee because we're hoping to hear from you. So you get your the brains booted and active because we're here to hear your questions and comments about our work. We'll begin the session with some background on the work of the panel, but the majority of the session, we would like to hear your views on the future of the research support system. I'm Frédéric Bouchard. I'm the chair of the panel. Je suis doyen de la Faculté des Arts et des Sciences de l'Université de Montréal et j'ai le privilège de présider le comité consultatif sur le système fédéral de soutien à la recherche. Beaucoup de notre présentation va être en anglais, mais je vous invite, s'il vous plaît, à offrir vos commentaires et vos questions dans la langue, bien sûr, là, que vous souhaitez. Mon allemand n'est pas très bon, je préférais que ce soit en anglais ou en français, mais on fera comme on peut. I'm joined by two of our 6 colleagues on the panel. And before starting, I'll ask them to introduce themselves. Vianne?
Good morning, everyone. You're amazing soldiers to get up so early and join us. I'm Vianne Timmins, and I'm President and Vice Chancellor of Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador. Welcome.
Mon nom est Gilles Patry. Je suis l'ancien directeur général de la Fondation canadienne pour l'innovation. So I'm the past president of the Canada Foundation for Innovation and also past executive director of the U15.
So for the introduction, we'll have, there are a few blocks just to give you a general idea of our work. So the advisory panel on the Federal Research Support System, you can see the terms of reference on the website. The link is on ISED. So what we'll do is we'll cover briefly some of the justification for the work in terms of the importance of the research system, then the mandate of the panel, and then some points about the process and key themes, and then conclusion, and then opening up to the room. And I would ask Vianne to start with the importance of the research system.
So I know this is a topic that's close to all of your hearts, and you all understand the importance of Canada's research system, and that's why you are here at this conference. As you know, research plays such a key role in solving problems and building a better future for Canadians. And as a university president, I'm acutely aware of the importance to our researchers that we have a system that works. And as the global pandemic has made it clear, science and research is more important than ever and needs to take center stage to help us address economic, environmental, and social challenges. Science informs every step of our path to create a strong, resilient economy and society, and now more than ever, it is an imperative for us. The pandemic also, in particular, highlights the importance of a collaborative, coordinated, and agile system to address new priorities for Canadians. Canadian science and research is recognized globally, and we have a world-class system, world-class researchers. And we've punched above our weight, but we need to continue to examine ways to enhance the systems of supports for our researchers to ensure that Canada's research remains the best in the world. And not just our researchers, but also all of our graduate students. This is critical as we move forward in Canada.
Merci, merci Vianne. And this is why the ministers of Innovation, Science, and Industry, as well as the Minister of Health, have launched this panel with the mandate to, and this is important, and I would encourage you to go back to the website and read the mandate, but I'll repeat it here. The mandate is to review and recommend enhancements to the structure and governance of the federal system of support for academic research with particular focus on the 3 granting councils and CFI with particular focus. So the word particular is also important. So we've been asked to direct our advice, ensuring that federal support for Canada's academic research enterprise is, number 1, coordinated, cohesive, balancing respect for the needs of disciplinary communities with a holistic perspective across disciplines. So that's the first point. The second point is to be responsive to the multi- and interdisciplinary collaborative and international approaches that are increasingly the hallmark of transformative research and innovation. And finally, to be agile and to be able to seize new opportunities addressing emerging research, economic, and social needs. We've also been asked to provide advice on the structure and governance to better support talent, development and retention, and knowledge mobilization, innovation, and commercialization. Again, within the context of the 3 granting councils plus CFI in particular. And then finally, the perspective on support for research infrastructure, including major research facilities, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this this morning. The work of the panel builds on the recommendations of the Fundamental Science Review, which urged the government to review progress on coordination of efforts within the system to determine if further enhancements to coordination mechanisms are needed.
So to get to the panel process and key themes, to give you an overview, pour accomplir ce mandat, nous avons commencé à rencontrer, nous continuerons à rencontrer une variété de parties prenantes et des experts de différents secteurs au Canada, de même que des représentants de différentes juridictions provinciales et internationales, afin de nous aider à trouver les meilleures idées, les meilleures recommandations pour d'ici et d'ailleurs pour améliorer le système. Our outreach has included a variety of groups. It's a pleasure to meet a few of the persons we've met over Zoom or Teams or some of you in person. So our outreach has included a variety of groups, including student associations, faculty groups, university and college associations, researchers, including Indigenous researchers, national and provincial research funders, and as well as industry. Now, with this kind of work, the question is always, because we're very attentive to the question of whatever we do, does it help us get a better footing on the international stage in terms of collaboration? Understanding that you can't import a model from another country directly to the Canadian context, but still, there are things to learn, good and bad, things that work great, things that haven't worked great, and try to emulate where appropriate and avoid, if possible, other mistakes. But basically, we've had the great privilege of meeting with officials from the German government, representative from UKRI in the United Kingdom, the head of CNRS in France, as well as the president of the National Science Foundation in the United States, which allowed us to exchange on both, what they like and maybe would like to improve in their own national context, but also how they perceive Canada's role in the science and innovation community. Just to be, so one comment that we get very often, and the tone is, it's not clear whether it's praise or a curse. We know that we don't have a lot of time. So, people tell us, oh, well, what a huge task for so little time. But actually, and I would like to offer, this is my personal view, my hunch is that a lot of that type of consultation or that type of panel will adopt that kind of pace in the future. And one of the reasons, and we see this with our very dense scheduling, is that we do have in-person and in Zoom or in Teams consultation. So a consultation that would have lasted over a much longer period, because you would have to find a day here or there where people could fly in Ottawa or Vancouver or Calgary or to have consultations. Well, now we can have 2 days during the week. We can meet people from all over the country. We can have a meeting the following week, the following week, the following week. So yes, it's a very dense process. But actually, in terms of the depth of the consultation we're having, it's actually we can be I think confident that we're getting the advice we need. So this is in terms of let's say the rapidity of the process. So there are efficiency gain clearly by having some virtual meetings. We're happy to see you in person, obviously. And also is that, spring, for a variety of reasons, is the major policy season for all governments, but for the Canadian government. So there's also the idea that we're hoping to make most of the possibility that our policy recommendations could be implemented rapidly. And so there's a cost at taking longer to have consultation, because basically it means it's not a few additional months, it could be an additional year or 2 years. So I think here it's not so much that speed is of the essence, but I think that if we can have an efficient process with efficient recommendations, I think we increase the likelihood that they will be implemented. That's not under our control, but that's part of the motivation for how we're working. Up to now, a number of issues have been raised, so I'm not going to go through all of the issues that have been discussed, obviously. But just to give you an idea of some of the themes that have been raised, obviously the question of how strategic priorities and goals for the research enterprise are defined and articulated, and how progress is measured across those goals. Obviously, and Vian mentioned this, how multi and interdisciplinary research and international partnerships are supported and advanced. And as I mentioned earlier, how other countries are trying to improve their positioning for international collaborations. I should say that so far, what's been striking with our discussions with extremely thoughtful questions with representatives from Germany, the UK, France, and the US, is that everyone all over the world, they're asking the same questions, right? So this is not, we're not in a particular situation. Obviously, we have a reality that we're trying to better understand, but all funding research support systems are asking similar type questions, and they'll provide their own national solutions. Other priorities that have, other issues that have been identified repeatedly or that have very forcefully, obviously is the need to strike the right balance between investigator-driven and mission-driven research, supporting talent, we mentioned this earlier, coordinating funding for research and associated infrastructure, that's a big item, so infrastructure, but also the activities that are tied to it, supporting major research facilities, connecting the research, innovation, and talent continuums. That's a big file, but this is something where we heard a lot of very interesting themes and issues that have been addressed in our consultations. And also, and this is work in progress, and it's somewhat beyond the purview of our work, is the linkages to the Canadian Innovation and Investment Agency that had been announced and that is currently being articulated. Which was highlighted in the fall economic statement. So anyway, for the remainder of the session, we would be interested in hearing your views. Nous sommes ravis d'entendre vos questions, vos commentaires. S'il y a des thèmes particulièrement importants pour vous que vous souhaitez que nous soyons sensibilisés à l'importance de ces questions. I should point out, and this allows me to thank our secretariat because, you know, we're here now and we have other colleagues that couldn't be here today, but my heartfelt thanks to Kristen Haddad and Ryan Hempel in the secretariat. They do a lot of the background work, and they'll be taking notes today. Your comments will be, we will bring them back to the full committee. So let's opening up. So there are 2 mics. I think there are 2. So yeah, if you could just go up to a mic, introduce yourself clearly, and then if you could voice questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm first. Boy, this is important to be first in this important session. I'm Gordon McBain. I'm a professor at Western University. I used to be an assistant deputy minister in Environment Canada, but more importantly in this context, I was the president of the International Council for Science, which is the major organization globally that organizes all the global research programs on, say, Future Earth, Research for Global Sustainability, World Climate Research Program, and many others. And I'm just thinking Canada has, over the years, played varying roles in this, and right now the roles are not quite as pronounced and it would be, to me, in my opinion, very useful to have your group talk about ways in which we could enhance the participation and, with the support of the federal support system, participate as Canadian teams with scientists from all over the world, literally, in these kind of programs on major issues. Because we learn from each other, we gain the benefits, and anyway, just that's the point. Thank you. Yes.
But before you leave, would you have any suggestions in terms of how best to do that? From a practical perspective, I know you've been involved internationally. What is missing right now?
Well, one thing that's missing is the support of Canadian national committees to bring together the scientific community within Canada, and through those committees have them connect to the international committees. We have the Future Earth program has its office, one of its offices in Montreal. Eliane, I don't know if Eliane is here today or not, but anyway, she spoke on this the other day, well, at lunch yesterday and previously. I happen to chair the board of that organization. So I think that having the support to build links with the Canadian team, and as being part of that thing, we have the connections internationally to say, well, this is what we want to do. Let's build an Arctic program, for example. I was the chair of the World Climate Research Program back in the 80s, and when I was appointed to it, I asked them, where's your Arctic program? They said, oh, we don't have one, that's not important, we're focusing on the tropics. Well, when I became the chair, we had an Arctic program. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi, Jeff Krellinson from Research Money. Yesterday there was a very good panel, and Alicia Main was on it, Simon Kennedy, and the idea of 80% of our graduates came up. 80% of our graduates don't go on to tenured positions. And so a suggestion would be to have the granting system fund activities for that 80%. And that has to do with your link to the Innovation Agency as well. It has to do with your link internationally. And while you do that, I know the Harper government tried to bring in more of that type of funding, but then they cut the fundamental funding. You can't do that because for a company, I've talked to many CEOs, and graduates are very important to them. Not the research itself, but the fact that that graduate did research, knows who the leaders are in the field, has problem-solving skills. It's the people that companies want. Sometimes they want the research, particularly in bio and things like that, but not always. It's mostly the people. So you have to take responsibility when you're funding the faculty, is to give them support to help that 80% without cutting the other. So the other thing you have to do is convince the government to increase the pot, so that when you have these two types of funding activities, you don't cut one for the other. Now, it's hard when there's inflation and things like that, but the public has to be aware that science is important for them. And so there's a whole communications piece as well, which maybe you know, in the social sciences and humanities, there are people you fund who are good at that. So fund them for that reason. So you said the first thing is your goal. Your goal is to improve the science, technology, innovation ecosystem in Canada. Keep that in mind and figure out where to put the money. I'll give you one example of a thing that you could fund. CREAC is an organization in Montreal, industry in aerospace. They'll invite a company like CAE to a university. All the faculty who are invited, the postdocs, the graduate students, sign NDAs. And they sit there and the company says, you know, we're looking 3, 4, 5 years down. This is what we're interested in. And they have a brainstorm, and sometimes a faculty member or a postdoc says, well, let's do a research project together. And they do a research project together. You can fund that. That's an example, but there's millions of others.
Thank you. Just a reminder, I forgot to mention earlier, given the tight timeline of the panel, we've also launched an online questionnaire on the website of the panel. And so if you go to our website, in the lower section, you'll see there's an email address, but there's also the online questionnaire. And this allows us to collect additional input. We're taking notes for the advice and comments you have this morning, but if you would like to provide it in written form as well, you can do it through our website. And because of the tight timeline, we're trying to get all of the, let's say, online contributions by December 1st. Okay, so if you, when you get back on the train or something, if you look on the website, if you can send us short recommendations in written form via the email or online questionnaire, or if you want to tell your colleagues about it, please, we would be very happy to hear from you. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Michael Wolfson. I spent quite a while being an assistant chief statistician at StatCan, and after retiring from the public service, I had the privilege of a Tier 1 CRC at the University of Ottawa. My concern has to do with, I guess, the definition of infrastructure and the way it's funded, and I'm particularly thinking about data and data in the social science, health services, and population health research area. It seems that the research establishment is able to fund cyclotrons. They're able to fund the ongoing climate modeling, able to fund cosmological simulations. But when it comes to putting together the complex and potentially extraordinarily powerful data that Canada already has in many silos across the country in provincial admin databases and at StatCan, there doesn't seem to be a way to get funding. CFI funds infrastructure, which mainly is bricks and mortar, although sometimes it's data. And the granting councils will fund things for 3, maybe even 5 years. NCEs maybe a little bit longer. But my experience over many years is that there is simply no window for the funding of integrated work that brings together complex data, data analysis, simulation modeling. And it requires more than just researchers and grad students. It requires ongoing funding for technicians and data scientists. So there's the problematique, the challenge of what people can, I guess CFI can spend a little bit of money on operating costs, but you're limited, if memory serves, to 30% or something. Anyway, you get the idea, and maybe I should write a little essay for you guys.
Thank you. Yes.
But just as the past president of CFI, I've got to jump in. CFI does fund data, as you well know, and there's an increasing awareness of the importance of data as infrastructure. That's for sure. Not only the infrastructure to store the data, but the actual data itself. And there are many, many examples of that.
I would have bet that you would jump in on that question. Just, yes.
Hi there. Sarah Lubick, Simon Fraser University. First off, thank you for the work you're doing. I know it is a huge project. My concern and hope is around the training side of things, because we know that oftentimes this translation to impact training falls at a place that isn't quite seen as academia and is also not near being, should not be near being treated like a proper company. So there's, a often 10 to 20 year place where you not only aren't a company, but shouldn't be a company yet because of the resources, exploration, et cetera, that need to go in there. And that is a place that is matched with that 80% of students who don't go into academy. And actually the 20% who do, who need the training to be better able to translate their science into research. But with that treating of those early stage capabilities as company building, in Canada, we are often faced with having a matching principle, because for good reasons, we want industry to be investing, but if you're not industry yet, you're asking a lot of the researchers or of the people putting on research programs, which means that it's the well-funded universities who can participate. It's the already entrepreneurial labs who can participate. So my comment, and then I have a question, is that matching constraint that is often for my tax, for any of our other closer to industry projects, be removed and put with some other measure like sweat equity of commitment to take these things forward. Because otherwise, you're also, and EDI is a huge part of this conference, really biasing the people who can take part in these programs to well-funded schools and people who have generational wealth or already have connections or what have you, because we have this myth of an entrepreneur who can live in their parents' basement. Not everyone can live in their parents' basement. A lot of people have parents living in their basement at this point that they're taking care of after the pandemic. So that would be my recommendation. My question to you, because you talked about the NSF, they have that platform. They often don't require a matching constraint for, so what did you hear on that side? And do you have some comments to share? Thank you.
Well, I can't speak for the NSF, but we did talk about the various instruments with the NSF. I cannot give you a satisfying answer to your question, but the question of matching funds, has come up from numerous stakeholders, and depending on the type of programs, there's some where, because you're working with various stakeholders that could be in industry or provinces, or that's one type of programming where, it's raised, abolishing it was not highlighted as the ask, if you will. For other programs, it was described as you're describing it, as a hindrance for larger participation. So these themes have come up, but for the NSF, I can't speak to that, and because we didn't go into that level of details, except very candidly, it was clear, even though they weren't showing off about it, but that they have lots and lots and lots of money, and this was kind of, we were listening with a teary-eyed, and but it was just. So that has come up clearly in the discussion, even though they were very humble about it. It's on a different scale, and I think we have to be realistic as well, as what can we accomplish, not just our panel, but in Canada in general.
May I make a comment? So the other area you talked about was about well-funded institutions, and coming from Atlantic Canada with a lot of small undergrad institutions, that is part of the panel's consideration and discussion, that we have different universities in Canada, but all of them do research, right? Mm-hmm. All of them have researchers in the institutions, whether they're small, medium, or large, or comprehensive, or large. So that is something we have under our radar.
Thank you.
And just a point to your question, I think and I'm not prejudging the conclusions that we'll come up with, so don't take this as a conclusion, but it's having flexibility. The system needs to be flexible to address some of the issues that you've raised. So,
Thank you. That flexibility gives me hope.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Adam Sardi. I'm the Associate Vice President, Research and Dean of Graduate Studies at St. Mary's University in Halifax. And I thank Vianne for giving me the proper segue, because I'm here representing a group of, right now, about 40 Canadian universities in the Alliance of Canadian Comprehensive Research Universities. It's a group of the people that run the research office at small to medium-sized universities in Canada. And what we want to make sure that the panel hears is the concerns of this group of universities, which is about 80% of the universities in Canada, but who receive 30% or less, depending on the agency of the research funding. But yet we train a disproportionate number of the graduate students that enter all of our Canadian universities. So and I can say that Memorial is a member of a crew, but Memorial is an odd member of a crew because they are by far larger than the rest of our members, but they felt like they belonged with us. And that's because we struggle to understand our position in this holistic Canadian landscape, where we're interested not just in the diversity of discipline and interdisciplinarity, but about the geographical diversity where research is taking place in the country, and the community-based focus that a lot of these small to medium-sized universities tend to be more focused on than the larger U15 and urban-based universities. And the last comment I'll say is with respect to the earlier discussion on infrastructure. From our university point of view, people are our infrastructure, especially when we're engaged in doing community-engaged research, where what we really need is people to help us have the discussions with the community. So thank you for keeping us on your radar.
Thank you. Yes.
Good morning. Rob Crawhall, Executive Director of the Canadian Academy of Engineering. And I was really interested in a number of items that you touched on, the international collaboration, the mission-oriented research, the countries that you had particularly highlighted for collaboration. I'll just do a quick shout out that Dr. Panchanathan, who's the director of the NSF, is actually a fellow of the Canadian Academy, being a graduate of the University of Ottawa. So, but the U.S. Academy of Engineering reached out to us almost a year ago to say, we want to collaborate with Canada, the UK, France, Germany, the same list of people, on where are we going from a national security perspective on the future of networks, which touches heavily on AI and quantum cybersecurity. And so we've held a couple of events with them that's brought in Japan and South Korea and UKRI and all the people you're talking about. But they seem to be very organized. And in Canada, we don't seem to have the same structure. So we've set up, so the Academy of Engineering is 60% academics, 40% industry, basically. And we have 60 current and former deans of engineering and about 50 CEOs, CTOs. So it's an interesting mix. So that's one of the areas. How do we actually coordinate research programs when it's touching on issues of future-looking national security? The other one that we've been working on a lot is in the net zero area. And one of the big concerns within the Academy as a mission, we know what the mission is, we know what the timeline is, But the scale up and the requirement for research as we scale up from the technologies we have today to 2035 and 2050, which is a really short timeline for research. How do we collaborate with, again, the same players, and it may also be with China and a lot of others, to make sure that the Canadian research project delivers scaled up solutions in time to meet our net zero commitments to 2050. So the pieces all seem to be there, but the coordinating mechanisms that appear to exist in Germany through Architect, in France through the NATEF, US Academy of Engineering, and actually all of those groups don't appear to exist here in Canada. And so I think there's a real opportunity there to up the effectiveness on mission-oriented research.
Thank you. So let me check the time. We're almost out of time. So we'll take the last two questions on this mic because they were waiting in line. I'm sorry, but feel free. We'll have a few minutes if you can just, we can talk after the meeting. So we'll take the last two questions briefly.
Thank you. Jeff Kinder, now with the Council of Canadian Academies, but for the last 5 years with the Institute on Governance. And so I want to raise governance. And thank you for your service, particularly on such a short timeline. I'm glad that you're viewing the short timeline as a virtue, because I think it's an opportunity to be bold. Very quickly, the founding act for NSERC says that the functions of the council are to promote and assist research in the natural sciences and engineering, other than the health sciences, and advise the minister in respect to such matters. The SSHRC Act is worded similarly. Nowhere in these acts is the word university, the word academic, the word higher education. There's an opportunity here to be bold on governance, and it's not a time to be incremental. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Shannon Bard from the University of British Columbia. So I wanted to build on this theme of connecting research, innovation, and talent, and some of the comments that Sarah Lubick made, as well as Alicia Main yesterday. So we focus on helping research translation through entrepreneurship and venture building, and we really focus on that 80% of the graduates that are not going to get faculty positions. So we see that those founders are the most vulnerable that we have in our ecosystem. And the reason why is that they often can't bootstrap, which is self-fund their program for 2 years. If you don't have boots, it's pretty hard to bootstrap. If you're sending remittances to your home country, you're a single parent, or you don't have permanent residency yet, that makes you extremely vulnerable. And you don't have a family and friends round to do your first round of financing, that makes it very difficult. So ability to get founder salary, similar to what Sarah Lubick was mentioning, without having to actually pay 50% of your pocket out to my tax. The second piece is often these founders can't get access to research facilities because they've just graduated. And third is they often, grants that are available or non-dilutive funding doesn't allow them to file patents, won't fund that. So one of the programs that does fund those three pieces is Genome BC's Pilot Innovation Fund. So I would look at that as a particular model for this. And the last note is that this is a very strong line and link to equity, diversity, and inclusion, because we need to have more shots on goal to meet our targets for our climate solutions. And we have a big funnel of inventors, but what comes out at the end, all the teams look alike. So if we can provide more support and close those holes where these teams are falling, these vulnerable founders are falling through, we'll be in a better position. Thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing the red sign. So again, a reminder, vous avez le questionnaire en ligne. Si vous pouviez le remplir, si vous avez des conseils ou des questions jusqu'au 1er décembre. So the online questionnaire until December 1st. And there's also the email address that you can send your comments to. And to you all, in various ways, we know many of you, or we've heard of many of the institutions you're working in. This is a heartfelt from the panel because we're hearing such great stories from across Canada. Thank you all, seriously. Thank you all for supporting our talent and our ideas. And we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts on our work. Thank you very much.